Hello, friends of the planet. It's Monica Medina here, and we are thrilled to have with us today Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts, who recently won re-election but has long been a member of Congress and fighting for environmental issues his entire career. And it is just a thrill and an honor to have you with us today, Senator. Thank you so much for making time.
Well, thank you for having me on. Our time is arriving for action on climate. It's just so great to be with you.
So you just recently won re-election, which is awesome for all of us who need a climate champion or two in the Senate. We're so thrilled that you're going to be back. And you really doubled down on climate. You didn't run away from it or pussyfoot around it. You really ran right into climate as a top issue in your campaign. Tell us about why that was, and what advice would you have for other Democrats who are a little anxious about making climate so central to their election bid?
Well, message number one would be that young people really care about climate change. They think that they have been handed over a huge problem and that the preceding generations have been completely irresponsible in not taking the dramatic action which is necessary. I ran on the Green New Deal. I ran on the need for dramatic climate action. And young people, that is people from age 18 to 34, younger people as well, but they can't vote, but they were in big time. High school kids, middle school kids were in big time volunteering in the campaign. Historically in Massachusetts, approximately 10% of the vote in a Democratic primary, voters age 18 to 34. This year, it was 19% of the voters were age 18 to 30. And moreover, climate was their number one issue. They had the most passion. They had the most activation in this race. They were bringing out other people. We were getting 16-year-olds to get out 46-year-olds because the 46-year-olds, the 56-year-old, the 66-year-olds could see the level of passion and energy in these young people. And so to a very large extent, my race was built around young people, letting them be the leaders in my race for re-election to the United States Senate, and ultimately coming pretty close to doubling the turnout amongst 18 to 34-year-olds, but doing a lot more than that because they were the political engine driving the race. And I think it was pretty clear that there's a lot of untapped political power inside of this issue, which my race demonstrated to other senators, to other people running for office, can be tapped if you lead and if you challenge young people to get out in front and to pull everyone else in behind them. And that's what happened with the Green New Deal. That's what happened to the Sunrise Movement in my race, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and everyone in backing me. And it created just an incredible amount of political energy in my race. And I think it's a good lesson for everyone else running for office next year or in 2022.
And climate issues aren't going anywhere. So I imagine that they are going to be at the forefront of our political conversation. I wanted to pivot a little bit. And now that we are turning the page on the Trump era, there's been some public discord among Democrats that are more progressive and that hold more centrist views on climate policy issues. But at the end of the day, Democrats are the nation's best chance for enacting real climate policy and acting on this crisis. So I wanted to ask, how could you and Representative Ocasio-Cortez work with your colleague Joe Manchin, perhaps, on finding common ground around climate change action, as well as other environmental issues?
Well, I would say that it's all about jobs. It's all about job creation. And we know that we can create 10 million new jobs. At least that's what the goal is that Joe Biden has now created with his climate plan, with his environmental justice plan. And we can do it in a way that reflects what Franklin Delano Roosevelt did in the 1930s with his Works Progress Administration. We just have to say, there's going to be projects in every congressional district, in West Virginia, in Texas, in Nebraska, every congressional district in our country. That's the goal. That's the plan. That's going to be the vision. And we have to say it over and over and over again. This is going to be the greatest blue-collar job creation engine in 2 generations in the United States. And they're going to be good jobs and union jobs. And so we want to partner with every member of the House and the Senate to put that kind of a vision in place. The $2 trillion economic, environmental, climate justice plan, which Joe Biden has put together, is something that will benefit West Virginia, that will benefit every state in our country. We just have to make it very clear what those projects are going to be, how they're going to create jobs, and how, honestly, we're also going to do it with environmental justice, because a lot of these communities have been the ones that have been the greatest victims. And we have to make sure that we have the funding that's going to go towards the projects that will benefit them and benefit them disproportionately.
So you think Infrastructure Week might actually happen?
Do I think that bill will actually happen? I think that obviously we're in the midst of a recession. We need ways of creating new jobs. And without question, in my mind, we know that these are jobs that can be created in a very brief period of time. And we have to do it in a politically savvy way. We have to do it bringing people together. We have to try to cross the aisle to find Republicans who do believe in climate science and also want to create jobs. I wouldn't be in this business if I wasn't an optimist. My great hope is that Joe Biden and his incredible relations with Republican leaders will be able to help to persuade them that this is the way that we can create jobs in the near term to help to get us out of this great recession. And I'm also very optimistic, I will say this, that we're going to win the 2 seats in Georgia.
Awesome.
So that we then have a majority in the House and the Senate to move an agenda. So I'm not writing that off at all. And we have just 2 great candidates in Pastor Warnock and John Ossoff. I can feel the momentum there too. And environmental voters, by the way, they're going to be coming out down in Georgia. This is an issue that can create a lot of political energy, especially out in the suburbs in Georgia, to help to elect those 2. But even if we don't win those seats, and I'm not writing it off at all, I still think we have a way of making the case that clean energy jobs are the best way to put people back to work fastest in our country.
And you know what we're up against in those races and in lots of races across the country? It's that soft money, the big donors on the Republican side. Do you have hope that we can even break through that? Because that's been a real problem up until now.
Yeah, without question. While the climate crisis is an existential threat to the planet, the Green New Deal and the Biden Build Back Better climate job creation plan, it's an existential threat to the business model of many of the fossil fuel companies. And they know it, including increasing fuel economy standards, using the Clean Air Act in order to put in place dramatic changes in the way in which we use energy, repealing the 100 anti-environment regulations. All of those things can be rolled back. And so from my perspective, I see this as a great opportunity. We should roll out the welcome mat to any who want to join. I think it's very clear that Joe Biden's goal is to make sure that all of the building trades are happy with his climate plan, that they're being brought along, that there is a transition, but it's a transition which is just, and that the jobs go to union workers in our country, part of this new energy infrastructure, which we are going to be building. And so we can expect the fossil fuel companies to pour a fortune in down in Georgia and in every race as we move forward. At the same time, our energy level is much higher. Our activists are much higher. And what I saw in my race is that the fundraising also was there because people increasingly care about this issue. And I will say this, I don't think that this race in Georgia is going to see Pastor Warnock or John Ossoff wanting for financial support. It's there. Al Gore and I did an event for these 2 Georgia candidates last Thursday night, and it raised between $400,000 and $500,000. And that was, just money from the environmental community going into these candidates' races.
So, Senator, shifting gears a little bit to an international perspective, as we're filming this, we just concluded the Global Climate Action Summit that took place where world leaders came together to mark the 5th anniversary of the signing of the Paris Climate Agreement. The United States didn't partake, but the incoming Biden administration has made it clear that they will re-enter the United States back into the Paris Climate Agreement. They want to engage the global community on these issues. So I wanted to ask, from your relationships, what have you heard from other leaders across the world about how the United States can best re-engage the global conversation on climate change and become a trusted player once again?
I think step number 1 is obviously re-entering the Paris Accord. You can't preach temperance from a bar stool. You can't tell the rest of the world, be a good environmentalist. Oh, we're doing well in the United States. That's Trump's big lie about the lowering of carbon emissions in the United States, and
Right.
expect the rest of the world to respond. You can't have your father smoking a cigar saying smoking's bad for you. It just doesn't work as a message from a public health perspective. So to the extent to which we get back in, President Biden has obviously made it one of his big four issues that he talks about over and over again, that he's named John Kerry as the special envoy to travel the world to put together the coalition that can not only ensure that Paris is being abided by, but that we put together an even stronger follow-on agreement amongst the nations of the world. Now, a lot of that will depend upon whether or not we take action in the United States. And I think every signal that the president is sending, including his promise to name a domestic energy and climate czar, as well as having John Kerry as the international envoy, I think is going to give us the political credibility, the moral credibility, which we've lost over the last 4 years, in order to put the United States back at the head of the table, being the leader rather than the laggard, which we have been for the last 4 years. And I think out of that will come action across the world. And I don't think it's going to be lost on people when they start to pay attention. The European Union just last week passed incredibly ambitious goals on the reduction of greenhouse gases. They're ahead of us. They're setting a standard that is going to be a challenge to us to catch up. And we should not expect China or India or other countries to stop in their goals to capture electric vehicle industry, the solar industry, the wind industry. And so it behooves us as a nation to once again grab the mantle of leadership. That's what Joe Biden is talking about. John Kerry's appointment is one of the steps that the president is taking, but I think there are going to be many more to follow.
And if you had any advice for that domestic climate czar, what would it be, given that legislation is going to be tough, even with a 50-50 Senate?
Well, again, I think that we have to begin with executive actions in rolling back the anti-environment actions, which Trump has taken, more than 100 of them. That sends a very strong signal, but also having the EPA and other agencies make it very clear that not only are we not going to be rolling back fuel economy standards, but we're going to increase them dramatically. We're going to be using the president's authority to open up vast areas so that we can have offshore wind, we can have onshore wind, we can have onshore solar, that we're no longer going to be allowing fracking on public lands, that all of those are very strong domestic signals to the rest of the world that the United States means business. And I think ultimately, the lower the cost of wind and solar and all electric vehicles is, the greater the likelihood that we're going to see unions and red states saying we're missing out on a big economic opportunity, and the politics as a result of this issue will only get better and better and better.
As long as the costs come down, it's good for business, it's good for people, it's good for our economy, it's good for the country. So thank you so much, Senator. It looks like you're moving. Are you going into a new office, or are you leaving the one you were in?
Oh, right now I'm in my hideaway underneath the Senate floor, waiting for the next federal district court judge approved by the Federalist Society that I'm going to vote no on here as the final weeks dwindle down. So I'm right below the Senate floor as we're having this conversation.
Coming to us from your hideaway. Thank you so much, Senator. And we really appreciate this.